years since the tragedy in Surfside. The Champlain Towers South collapsed in the middle of the night, taking 98 people down with it. In response, state and local lawmakers passed new safety requirements for residential high-rises and imposed new rules to make sure condo associations have enough money on hand to pay for repairs.
Our I-Team Chief Investigator Mike Magnoli has an important update for us tonight in the investigation into the collapse and the changes to the law, including a potential problem for future condo residents.
So, Jim, you remember when you and I were down there, even in the days after the collapse, investigators were already talking about drainage problems on the pool deck. Officials now call that the leading failure hypothesis. So let's break that down, right? Let's put that into simple terms. You want to build the pool deck on an angle so that the water is running off, otherwise there's potential problems. Investigators pretty confident that it was built wrong.
Unfortunately, nearly 2 years ago, I lost my 26-year-old sister, Nikki, and her husband, Louis Dovnik, who was 28 years old in the Surfside building collapse, along with 96 others.
Martin Langesfeld has been closely following the work of the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the federal agency studying the disaster at the Champlain Towers South. He's angry about this report that finds the pool deck and the columns supporting it weren't up to code. They were too weak, and for over 40 years, large, heavy objects were set down there, like gigantic palm tree planter boxes.
We could be minutes, days, weeks, or a year away from the next building collapse.
Martin is right. Florida has more than 1.5 million residential condominiums. Nearly 600,000 of them are at least as old as the Champlain Towers. That means the same 40-year-old construction methods and the same 40-year-old building codes.
How many more is it going to take? We've seen this with the Boeing airplanes where it takes 2 or 3 to go down for them to wake up.
In that spirit, Florida lawmakers passed new laws to protect residents in each of the last 2 legislative sessions. They required rigorous milestone inspections for condos to get recertified, and they established strict guidelines for maintaining cash reserves so safety repairs can be made when they're needed. Attorney Steve Rappaport says these rules will make condo living safer, but it's also going to drive prices up. In some buildings, by a lot.
Well, when you think about it, we're in the middle of inflation. We're in the middle of insurance rates skyrocketing 200-300%, and sometimes even more. And now you have the inability to waive reserves, or making it a lot harder to waive certain reserves. I mean, it's a perfect storm of circumstances. It's going to make condominium living very, very expensive in the near future.
And that could turn older condos into beachfront ghost towns. Another concern Rappaport points out is a new law that cuts the statutes of limitations for suing over construction defects from 10 years to 7. So even if there's a huge problem, like the pool deck at Champlain Towers South, if it isn't discovered in 7 years, the builder is off the legal hook.
I mean, we're talking 2 years from the Champlain Towers collapse and all these other obligations that we're now forcing on our condominium clients, but yet at the same time we're going to be taking away a remedy when there's bad construction. It just doesn't seem to make sense.
Representative John Snyder from Martin County sponsored that bill. CBS12 News has been asking why for months. We sat down with him this week.
Why did you bring this to the table?
Well, Mike, when we look around the state, we see right now the cost of pretty much everything is rising. And in my opinion, one of the most important things for the citizens of Florida is to be able to have easy access to home ownership and to affordable housing. And so in an effort to try and bring the cost of construction, as we know the demand continues to rise, this was common sense legislation that's been working through the process for a number of years, and we finally got it over the finish line this last session.
Martin Langesfeld traveled to Tallahassee, begging lawmakers not to pass that law. He told them it would only help developers and insurance companies, not people living in the buildings or those who died in one. And I shared those concerns with Snyder.
And I quote, "This is a terrible law. This is a disaster waiting to happen." How do you respond to that?
Yeah, I'd say there's always going to be naysayers in anything that happens in the process, and that's really the beauty of it. This bill went through 3 different committees, was heard on the floor. Folks who agreed or disagreed came, gave their piece, and we did take amendments on the bill. And so again, in that final product, something we're very proud of, and again, hope to continue working in this effort to lower the cost of housing here in the state of Florida.
And you know, Governor DeSantis signed a whole package of bills trying to rein in out-of-control lawsuits in Florida. He agrees with the representative that part of the reason that insurance and other costs are so high here is because everyone is suing everybody else. The governor says that's bad for the economy. Now, bringing us back to the Surfside investigation, that's still ongoing. The final report expected sometime next spring. For the I-Team, I'm Mike Magnoli. Back over to you.
All right, thanks, Mike. Well, new affordable home.